welcome back to the second video of the SwiftUI course. This time we're gonna learn all about layout and stacks. So we're trying to create this layout right here, and you definitely need to know a bunch of techniques. First of all, how do you align the text to the left? How do you add another image to the right? How do you put this card on top of another one? And how do you order the modifiers so that they work perfectly? First things first, we're going to need to align both texts to the left. So what we can do is command click the V stack, so this box right here, click inspect, and you can set the left alignment for the V stack, like this. The next thing is we're gonna add the image to the right, so we're gonna search for the image and drag that to the right, like this. What it's going to do, it's going to create a horizontal stack for this vertical stack plus this image. Our image has a frame of 30 by 30, so we're gonna have to set a frame. Command click the image, go to inspect, and set 30 by 30. So by default, the image is not resizable. What we're gonna need to do is add a modifier called resizable. So I'm going to make sure that this image is selected, and also in the code, summon the modifier and search for image resizable, like this. I'm just gonna put this in its own line, and also I want to push the spacing between. So what we need to do is to add spacing. Now, we need to make sure that we have the correct frame selected. And by selecting the curly braces, you can see sort of like what is part of what. And on top of that, you can also do Control I to make sure that it's well indented and easy to read. So now we have this V stack, which contains two text. And then next to that, we have the image. So we need to add the spacer in between the V stack of two text and the image. So I'm going to summon this, Command Shift and L, type spacer, but the spacer is not part of the modifiers, but it's part of the views. So you can find a spacer right here and just click it, and it's going to apply this to your layout. Now it's taking the whole width of the screen. By default, it takes the minimum width, but if you apply the spacer, it's going to push everything to the entire available space. And now you can set the frame to minimize that if you want to. So I'm going to select the entire frame. You can select from the code as well. So the V stack, which is a parent container, I can command click the parent stack, inspect, and let's set the frame to 340 and then the height to 220, like this. You don't need to press enter. So now we have a container which is a V stack, and then we have one H stack which is on top of the image background. As always, it's important to have a negative spacing of at least 8 from the sides, and I'm going to command select the H stack right here, go to inspect, and add a padding from the left and the right. So as you can see in code, it creates the padding inside the parentheses. It's just horizontal, which applies to left and right at the same time. Now let's talk about dynamic types, because it's really important to use as much as possible the ones that are provided, such as large title, title, and headline. And that's really good for accessibility because a lot of people use bigger fonts set up on their phone and they like to see really big types. Designs that are usually provided in Sketch don't always take that into consideration, but I think it's important to discuss that with your designer. And if you really want to use a custom size for your font, which is really easy to do in code, make sure that it's big, readable, and that you're well aware that it's not going to grow in size. If you go to the Human Interface Guidelines for iOS, to visual design, and typography. You scroll down a little bit, you're gonna find the sizes. So the large title is 34. So you can definitely kind of try to match the numbers as much as possible. There's the title, but you won't find title 2 or 3, as well as caption 2, but the rest are definitely there. Back to the design, you can see that this one is 20, and there's nothing that really matched 20. So we can definitely round a little bit, or if your designer is really passionate about this specific size, then, you know, just let them know that it's not gonna be adaptive. But usually, if it's in the name of accessibility, I don't think your designers are really gonna fight it. In fact, I don't think it makes a huge change in the design at all, as a designer myself. So I'm gonna go here, I find that this text is definitely too big. I'm gonna go here and change from title to, let's say, headline. And for certificate, it's not bold, so we're not gonna use headline, but it is the same as body, and body is already there by default anyways. Since we set up the frame for the entire card, and the frame is actually bigger than the content, right? So we have this little spacing here at the bottom. So we can add a spacer in the middle to fix that issue. So let's pull a spacer and put it right in the middle. And there you go. Let's add some drop shadows. Designers love drop shadows. And for the V-stack here, we are going to add a shadow. So right at the end, press enter, find the shadow. The shadow is gonna be in the modifier and drag it right here. By default, it's set to 10. I like the number 20. The default drop shadows already look pretty good, to be honest, in SwiftUI. Compared to a lot of design tools or in Swift, you don't have to do a lot of customizations because the default is already good looking. Now I want to discuss the ordering of the modifiers, because putting a drop shadow before, let's say, the background is different than after the background, as you can see. This will definitely require a lot of practice, but the ordering is really important if you see that, for example, the drop shadow is not applying correctly. I'm going to remove the extra space and do Control I to do my indentation properly. Alright, so the next thing I want to show you is how to use the Z-stack to put a bunch of elements on top of each other. We're going to create this background card. So I'm going to go back to Xcode. So let's go to the entire container, which is the entire V-stack here. And the thing is, you can decide to embed this inside another container by command clicking this and going to embed. The thing is, you don't see embed in Z-stack, so we're going to use one of the two, either H-stack or V-stack, it doesn't matter. I'm going to select the first one, and it's simply going to add another container to my card. So I'm going to change the H-stack into a Z-stack. So let me explain a little bit. V-stack is for vertical, H-stack is for horizontal, and Z-stack is for kind of like a three-dimensional. So one on top of another one in the third dimension. So right after the first curly braces, before the V-stack, I'm going to set a new V-stack. And you're not gonna see it because it's right in the background. And the way it works is that the first object in the stack, it's gonna be underneath, and what is after is gonna be on top. So let's start with the frame. Command click, go to inspect. We're gonna set the same size. So 340 and 220. Let's set the text to card back, and let's set the background color so that we can see it. If you command click and inspect, you're not gonna see the background, so we're gonna have to add a new modifier right after the frame, add a background. Let's set it to blue for now. So you can already see a blue card in the background, although not much. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the offset so that it moves a little bit by a few pixels. So let's go another line, search for offset, and here we can move the X position and the Y position. We're gonna move the X position by nothing and the Y position to -20. Then we can just add the corner radius. Let's set it to 10, and then the drop shadow. Let's set it to 20. So again, you see that there's a problem with the ordering. Usually you want to put the offset at the end, and you want to put the frame at the very beginning. I'm just gonna fix this padding right here and set the width to 300. Great, so now we have two cards, and I don't want to add a third card because what I want to show you is how to create a component so that we can reuse that component multiple times without having to recode it from scratch every time. As you can see, the layout in SwiftUI is really intuitive and it's very visual. Anyone with very little knowledge of code can come in and do a bunch of powerful stuff without even understanding so much about the code. The thing is, we're only scratching the surface. In the next session, I want to show you how to create components, how to add blending modes, 3D transforms, rotation, and a bunch of really interesting stuff. So I'll see you in the next session.